the Reconstructionist Radio Podcast Network presents Worldview Media Podcast, where Gordon and Joyce Runyon view popular media through the lens of the biblical five-point covenant model to help believers appreciate and apply principles of exciting narrative and engaging storytelling.
Coming to you live from the Center for Ethical Galvanism.
What?
It's the award-winning Worldview Media Podcast.
I didn't even know. What did we win?
We are the 2017 winner of the prestigious Poddy Award for Best Media-Focused Worldview Podcast.
Wow. I thought it was going to be for being the most frivolous podcast.
On the Worldview.
On the Reconstruction.
You don't get an award for that other than just the satisfaction that we are.
Sometimes you get the odd looks, though.
Yeah, that's true.
Maybe it's just because I'm with you. I don't know.
Submit, woman.
That's a good one. All right.
Hey now. Worldview Media Podcast, part of the Reconstructionist Radio Podcast Network, your one-stop audio shop for all your dominionizing needs. And this week we are taking a look at the Netflix series, The Frankenstein Chronicles.
Ooh.
Where's that Frankenstein?
I think it's Frankenstein.
But it could be Frankenstein.
Right. I hear there are some family members who prefer it that way.
I prefer to go by Frankenstein.
And this is a movie starring Boromir
Sean Bean
as Detective
John
Marlett.
Yeah, John Marlett.
Uh-huh.
And he's in early 19th century London town. And
Yep, London town.
he's a detective there originally, trying to find the perpetrators of a string of child kidnappings.
Mm-hmm. Well,
But on the other, that's not all he's doing.
Sure.
The thing starts with him coming upon the scene of a dead body that's washed up on the banks of the Thames.
Uh-huh.
And the dead body is a small child, several small children.
Yeah, so this dead body is a girl, but on closer inspection, it's a girl's body that's been sewn together from several different donor bodies, apparently.
Yeah.
It's pretty gruesome.
Yeah, 7 or 8 once they take it all apart.
Yeah, and so then the interesting, crazy thing is that as Marlett is investigating and touching the body here and there, looking at the stitching on the wrist, he's convinced that it moves and
grabs him a little.
Yeah, but just barely. And I
like
think
a reflex type thing.
Yeah, and I think for a while he talks himself out of thinking that there's much to that.
Right.
Well, he's got some other issues going on, too.
Marlett has issues.
Really?
Actually, that's one of the things that I really enjoy about season 1. At least we haven't progressed through season 2. So, but in season 1, Marlett's a very interesting character because he is suffering from syphilis, and back in that day,
That was it.
there was not much to be done about that.
Yeah.
And so he's basically got a death sentence hanging over him.
Uh-huh.
And before it kills him, it's going to drive him crazy. And everybody who is aware of syphilis knows that that's what's coming.
Right.
He knows it's coming. And the medical treatment that he does get from somebody is to ingest mercury pills. And
That's great.
mercury...
It's going to help him.
Mercury pills all by themselves will drive you nutty, right?
Yeah.
That's where we get the expression of the Mad Hatter.
Uh-huh. Because of the fumes and
Hat
stuff.
makers were breathing in mercury, and it made them crazy.
Doctors aren't what they used to be, huh?
Right. It's so much better now.
Is it? Is it? Sure.
And so anyway, on top of struggling with this disease, he's also dealing with an apparently gigantic load of guilt. His wife and his baby are both dead. We get this information in flashbacks and kind of crazed visions here and there. And he obviously feels responsible for their deaths.
Uh-huh.
And a lot of his visions focus on the prospect of meeting his family in the afterlife at some point.
Yeah.
So Marlett and most of the people around him are at least nominal Christians, meaning you wouldn't call them Muslims or Buddhists. I mean, they're immersed in a culture that has been influenced by Christianity.
Uh-huh.
And so he has some Psalms memorized and he's familiar with scripture and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Now, he may not be a great guy or anything. He may not be actually regenerate, but he's a nominal Christian at least with a basically Christian worldview.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And so, very interesting as he's investigating particularly the kidnapping of one girl that he's hoping to find alive.
She's missing.
Yeah. He's
Presumed
hoping to
dead.
find her alive and you knocked my train off the
You
tracks.
gotta stop interrupting.
I don't even know what I was going to talk about there.
Missing girl.
Yeah, I got that, but I was gonna. Oh boy. Okay, well, there's a separate kind of minor storyline for the first season. The major storyline is trying to find this girl, and minor storyline, you have this weird kind of Frankenstein thing going on, and he runs into a small conspiracy of kind of radical scientists who are using this process called galvanism, where they're going to try to electrical shock dead people back to life. And so he runs into this society, and one of the members of the society is actually Mary Shelley, the author of Frankenstein.
Yeah.
And I remember reading somewhere in real life that Mary Shelley was into some weirdness.
Yeah, that's probably very true.
Have you heard anything like that?
I stay away from things like that.
Yeah, you're not a big horror genre fan. Okay, so he meets up with Mary Shelley, and she is weird in this one in terms of she's obviously dabbling in extreme science that borders on mysticism and stuff like that. And the people that she is involved with are obviously not good people. And so hilarity ensues as the investigation proceeds. And he has pressures on him from his bosses because it begins to look like maybe the galvanism bad guys really go all the way up to the top of the government in London and stuff
Well, and
like
the
that.
person that sets him on this charge isn't the police. It's
The Home Secretary.
it's
Yeah.
a government official.
It's a higher government official than any of the police.
Yeah.
All right. So anyway, that first, I don't want to give anything away in the first season, but the season finale has a really neat swerve to it in terms of by the time you get there, you think the missing girl thing has been solved and that we know who the bad guys are. And becomes apparent in that season finale that oops, we got swerved. And I for one didn't catch it. I don't normally catch these things like Mom does, but I didn't catch it until it was there. And then I was like, whoa, whoa. And but then once that swerve happens though,
You're like, oh.
now you see that something really weird is going to take place, and you see that coming from a little ways off, and it's just, I think in that sense the storytelling has been really well done. So I'm trying to say I think that Boromir does a great job as an
Sean Bean.
actor. Sean Bean. I really think he's a great actor in this. He normally doesn't show up as a leading man or a good guy even.
Well,
I think his
who knows?
career has been mostly bad guys. But I liked him in The Lord of the Rings. I liked him in the first National Treasure. And here, I think he's excellent.
Yeah.
Because the character he's playing is very complex.
Right.
And you can kind of read the complexity in his expressions.
Yeah.
And I think it's fantastic, the job that he does. And then, like I say, the storytelling is deft in terms of being able to kind of have these two investigations going side by side, and you think the major one is over here, it turns out being over here.
Uh-huh.
And then right at the end, like I say, the swerve hits and I'm freaked out. So I'm looking forward to season 2. And
season 1 is just 6 episodes, so
Yeah.
it's really not.
well, they're both just 6 episodes. I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah, they're little short things.
And so I really like just about everything about it. I think the costuming is great. The production value is really high. The makeup, special
sets
effects,
and
what there is,
scenery and-
Yeah.
is really good. And so as of right now, I really recommend it. I think there's one scene, because people like to know about this sort of thing. There's one scene where they're chasing a bad guy, and he runs through a room where there's a woman who was just nursing a baby. And I think I think it happens so quickly, but I think she's topless for like less than a second. And
Yeah, probably.
It's
She goes
definitely-
to like,
it's definitely not nudity that they linger on, and she was nursing and all this. It still didn't need to be there, but less than a second. As I think back on it, I can't even. Was she really topless? I don't really know. And so, what are your overall thoughts about it? I've talked a lot about it, so y'all talk now.
what do you think, Mom?
Well, this isn't really a genre that I normally do. It's supposed to be horror and scary, and it's really a good detective story. You know, it's got some macabre things in it probably, but it's not really horror for the sake of blood and guts and, you know,
Right.
the scare your pants off type of thing. You know, where you have these things lurching around and stuff. So I really see it more as a detective story that's set within something that we normally see as a horror story. And what is going on really is it is horrific that children are disappearing, but you know, we don't see kids being caught and trapped and killed, and they really could have gone a whole nother way with this in the production, and they didn't. So I think that was really very smart of them to make it
Yeah.
a little bit more head scary instead of just, you know, just blood, guts, and gore and gross you out type of stuff.
Right.
Because they could have gone that way.
I guess I don't think of it as a horror series at all.
Yeah, no, I don't either.
And now here at the very last, it started out since the time they found that amalgamated body. It had that weirdness to it, and you knew there were people trying to do the Frankenstein thing with dead bodies. But it doesn't really, that really doesn't come to the forefront
No.
throughout most of the first season. And like Mom says, it's really a lot about just this detective and his dogged determination to find the missing girl, and
Right.
in spite of the setbacks that he's got going on within him. So season 2 might get a little bit more traditional horror story, but even though I can't even say that, it's already started off on a way that it can't really get there.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Just because of factors.
Right.
Things that happen.
The monster that we have seen is never going to be scary.
Yeah.
We can
Well.
say that.
Maybe. You don't know.
No, I think that's probably right.
But it is really kind of icky, and it's unnerving, a lot
Yeah.
of the things in it.
It's kind of psychological, maybe.
So overall, what were your opinions of it?
I like it. I feel like it's all quality stuff. The costumes and the sets and the writing has been really good so far, and he really is acting very well. He's an actor.
He's quality.
Yeah. And I feel like the characters are all interesting characters. Like, even the more sort of minor people who we, we know a little bit, but not as well as, like, our main
Aren't
guy.
as well developed, and still they're good.
And they're still interesting people, like the police guy who's like their
Nightingale?
boss.
Oh.
No, the other guy. I even think he's interesting. Like, I don't know, I just feel like it's a lot of
Good casting.
a lot of good cast and
Good characters.
good characters and
Yeah, good writing. It's a well-written thing. I think. So in terms of that, I'm 2 thumbs up. I really enjoy this.
I mean, you see it and you're like, well, I don't know. And it's worth a view. So
Yeah. All right. So let's take our break and we'll come back and talk Worldview, the thing that won us the award.
Are you interested in Christian education? Would you like to learn how to be a Christian teacher or how to run your very own Christian school with success? The GCS Apprenticeship Program can help. Learn more on our website at gcsapprenticeship.com.
The Reconstructionist Radio Podcast Network brings to you a complete lineup of podcasts where you will hear practical and tactical theology. Our desire is not simply that you consume our shows, but that you also live out your faith in every area of life. We can talk all day long about these things, but if we fail to put them into practice, then we fail as ambassadors of Jesus Christ, our King. Subscribe now to your favorite Reconstructionist Radio Podcast Network shows, or you can subscribe to the Reconstructionist Radio Master Feed, where all of the content we produce, including the audiobooks and audio articles, will pop up as soon as they are available. And don't forget to visit reconstructionistradio.com to volunteer as a narrator or to partner with this ministry financially. May the Holy Spirit stir you into action for Christ and His kingdom.
And we're back on the Worldview Media Podcast. And while we were listening to the commercial, Joyce pointed out that this movie, or this series, is actually pretty brand new. It was just released in February of 2018. So it's fresh, except for all the corpses. And
Ooh,
stuff.
those are
fresh too.
some of them are more
That's
fresh
right.
than others.
They don't even use the ones that aren't fresh.
Yeah, can't use those.
All right, so we want to talk more themes and worldview. Anybody have anything?
Well, I think one of the episodes, and I couldn't check without actually going into Netflix, was about a world without God.
That was the title of the
Yeah.
episode. Yeah.
And so there's a lot of thinking about, well, if this is reanimating dead people, then is that a world without God? Is that something that then that negates his validity, that he's no longer a real entity? It's just a fairy tale. We imagine these things because,
Yeah.
God is the person who gives life and takes it away. And so if somebody else can give it back, then
Yeah.
Does he
Maybe
really
God's
give it
not
to
God.
begin it?
Maybe
Yeah.
He's not in charge. Maybe people are. Well, and there's a worldview thing in that. And one thing that I really kind of appreciate about this movie is that it doesn't make Christians look stupid. You know?
Yeah.
The Marlet himself is a believer. Now he's run into a bit of a crisis of faith at the end of the series, but at the end of the season. But he's a believer, and he instinctually knows that the things that are being done by the bad guys are blasphemous and wrong, and he's right about that.
Yeah.
And
Right.
and there's a girl who winds up getting an abortion, and the abortion is done in such a way that I don't want to spoil anything and all that. Spoiler, I don't want to give any spoilers. But there's no doubt from the standpoint of the good guys in the story
that it was wrong.
that was wrong to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a horrible thing.
Yeah.
And
It was killing.
It was murder.
Yeah.
They even call it that.
Yeah.
You murdered your baby. This is what happened here.
Yeah.
And so I really thought that was great. For a little while, it seemed like maybe they were going to head in the direction of, well, really, this was the most merciful thing that could be done
Right.
for considering the woman that was involved. And,
Yeah.
but they didn't go that way.
Yeah, because it ended up,
And right, as the story progresses, you see, that was horrible. That was horrific. You know?
Yeah.
And so,
that it actually was a sign of badness to come.
yeah, and really, like I say, that does get horrific, the badness that was involved in that.
But you see that reflected in what goes on in our abortion industry today, is that, well, we have this matter, and so what can we do with it? How can we best utilize these things?
Right.
And that is just as blasphemous. I mean, I think that's worse, to take baby parts and these discarded poor little things and then turn around and turn them to manufacture them into something else.
Yes, medicine or something.
Yeah, and they,
right.
they do it.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do.
And nobody wants to talk about that. Nobody wants to recognize that that really is an industry, and it's getting a product and using that product, and it doesn't matter how the product's got.
Right. It really winds up being cannibalism. I mean, just in a different form. You're not actually tasting the flesh, but
if people were to know and realize what was going on with that, I would hope that.
Well, you would hope they would get freaked out about it.
They don't think about that.
You're talking about, you hope the average person out on the streets who would hear about aborted babies being used in medicine and stuff, that they would recoil at that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I have come to believe that the people that are really in favor of abortion, if they're willing to do it and understand that they're murdering a baby when they do it, and that doesn't change their opinion at all, I don't think they'll care what's done with the corpse after they do it. I'm not sure. I mean, a hardened heart is a hardened heart, you know.
Well, and I don't think that was the way it was in the beginning. I don't think that's what was happening.
Yeah, I'm not sure with regard to Roe v. Wade and how long after that was made the quote-unquote law of the land, even though the Supreme Court doesn't make law. How long after that did
before they said,
baby
"But
parts
wait,
start
what are we going to do
getting
with this
right.
abundance?" Yeah.
Yeah, so these are issues that do kind of find their way into the Frankenstein Chronicles, and I think in a respectful way. I mean, it's definitely not being promoted as a good thing. It's part of the horror.
Right.
Yeah. And so that's very interesting. And to me, so then I think there's interesting stories to tell there. What if the nominal Christian believers do run across this person who was dead and now has been raised to some form of life? Now what are they? Does that shake their worldview, or what do you do with that? And so I think a lot of that is really interesting. Mm-hmm. Anything else strike you, worldview-wise?
Well, there's another part where two people are talking, and they say heaven has been closed to us because of what we've done.
Yeah.
That they're fallen creatures, that they're abominations, so to say. But the reality is that that is your status without being saved, without Christ.
Oh, sure.
You know, that heaven is closed to you, and it doesn't matter if you've done something, terrible like killing somebody. Sin is sin, and heaven is closed to you. And so for them to say, well, because of this thing,
now I'm going to
now I'm really bad,
right.
That's the whole issue to begin with, is that it's not a scale of bad.
You were bad before.
It's all bad, and heaven is closed to humanity because of our sin.
Yeah. Yeah, and then correlating with that is guilt. And I think guilt is really kind of a major theme in at least the first season.
Yeah.
And how much guilt is on the shoulders of Marlet, and I think that's a real thing. Guilt will crush you as fast as unforgiveness will,
Yeah.
And,
The flip side of the coin.
right. Last podcast we were talking about unforgiveness, and now we're talking about guilt. But if you have some understanding of Christianity, then it's oxymoronic then for you to go around wallowing in guilt, because now you've just said, well, I used to think the blood was enough for me, the blood of Jesus, and now I'm done. And, how can that be? And so the resolution is the same in both instances. You really have to trust in the sovereignty of God and trust that the sacrifice of Christ really was enough. Or you'll either be crushed with unforgiveness or with guilt. And at least with guilt, though, my experience has been, you find somebody that really understands their guilt, they're not far from the kingdom of God at that point. Because the general reaction to feelings of guilt is just some form of escapism or hand waving and ignore it or don't think about it.
Yeah.
So if you find somebody that really is under a load of guilt, now there's somebody who might like to hear the actual gospel and find out about being released. And so it's an interesting part of the story to see the main character struggling so much with guilt and self-loathing, self-hatred, and really not having much of a will to live at points. And I think there's also something to be said about limits of science, not in terms of what humans can accomplish, because frankly, I won't get into why I think this, but I think the Bible teaches that the horizons for what humans can accomplish are way farther off than we have thought. I think we put our minds to it, we can do whatever we want to do. It's just, and so I don't think that Christians can fear that, and I don't think that Christians ought to be hesitant to back that or to cheer it when it happens. Technological advances tend to release humanity from bad things, and makes life easier and cheaper for everybody. And so that's something that we should get behind. However, I think what does get explored in this series is the idea that although our achievements may seem unlimited in terms of what the potential for humanity is technologically, there are limits to what science can do when it comes to morality and ethics, and really science by itself has no way of saying what's moral and what isn't. And you kind of see that happening in this story as well. And that's why the good guys, the characters that you're supposed to cheer for in this series, are the ones who understand that if these evil scientists are able to do what they're looking at doing, it's not going to be better for humanity. It's going to bring about a hell on earth. And so they really see this as, the whole human race is at stake here. And there's a sense in which that's true from what they're talking about. So Christians need to be I think we need to be very steadfast in pointing out, in the midst of technological advance, that not every advance for the sake of advancement is good. Just because we can do a thing doesn't mean we should, and doesn't even mean that we should try. And the boundaries, of course, have to be the same boundaries as everywhere else, which is the law of God. Of course, I doubt that this series will get to that point of making that particular statement, but it is interesting to watch how this works out.
Well, even for the detective, for John, he definitely sees boundaries, and this is right and this is wrong, and it's pretty much clear cut. I mean, I haven't seen him be very gray in what he thinks.
Right. he wouldn't even let the two people who were not related to him but were engaged. He put his foot down and wouldn't let them live together. After the wedding, that's fine, but not until.
Yeah.
It was kind of refreshing just to see that sort of
And
thing.
she was a nobody. I mean, nobody would have cared.
Yeah.
And nobody did care about her.
Right, except for him. Yeah. So, really, really very interesting. There's another worldview issue that I think we see here, and it's the issue of classes and how at that time it was still in kind of a, what would you call it, Edwardian era, where there was a nobility and then there were commoners, and then below the commoners even there was this basically a class of untouchables, lived in filth and squalor and all that. And you do see in this series, you see the people of power routinely believing that because they can take advantage of people beneath them, then it's probably fine for them to do that. It's just natural.
Yeah.
And so they have a really evolutionary theory about things, that you're less strong than I am, and therefore you must be there to facilitate my survival and not necessarily your own. So that's interesting to see that. And then again, to see that the bad guys in that are the bad guys in this series. They're not paraded around as being somehow good or anything like that. So, as a Christian guy watching the series, I didn't feel like I was being insulted at any point.
No. No, it's crazy. It's weird.
Yeah.
Because, I don't know, it's like all the bad guys really are bad guys.
Right. And they haven't yet tried very hard to blur the lines and make you feel like, well, maybe the bad guy is right. That hasn't happened yet.
It's all very down the line.
Right. All right. Anything else? We're about at the end of our time. Anything else anybody want to say?
Did you have any issues?
Did I have any issues?
Yeah.
I don't have any issues.
No worldview issues?
Oh,
Nothing?
worldview issues.
She's got issues. All right.
That's it.
Well, we talked about all the stuff that I was thinking.
All right. Very good. Well, I think that means we're done.
So watch this. It's worth a watch.
Yeah. Check out the Frankenstein Chronicles. We're enjoying it.
If you trusted us about the crown, trust us about this.
Did anybody trust us about the crown?
Aaron did.
Hey, Aaron. Try the Chronicles.
Oh, okay. All right. All right, very good. Well, thank y'all. Go out and dominionize for the sake of Christ. See y'all. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Worldview Media Podcast. Please visit ReconstructionistRadio.com to check out the other podcasts in our network and to download our free audiobooks.